Call this meeting to order. If we could please call the roll.
Certainly, Mayor. Mayor Bright Cruz,
Here.
Vice Mayor Jablonski,
Here.
Councilmember Albritton,
Present.
Councilmember Hartman,
Here.
Councilmember Kaczynski.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Great, thank you. If you'll please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Deb, can you bring up the PowerPoint?
Welcome, everybody. Glad to see you all here for the budget hearing. And at this point, Andy, I'll turn it over to you
Yeah,
for your
thank you.
comments.
Thank you, Mayor. Deb, can you go to slide 2, if you would? Oh, Rich? Okay. There's your calendar. Tonight is the first public budget hearing on Monday, September 12th. Tonight, we will set the final fire protection, fire assessment, and solid waste assessment, and we will have the first reading on the millage and the budget itself. Before I turn it over to Emil, though, I have one more slide that I want to speak to, and then I'm going to turn it over to Emil, and then we'll go through each item by item. We'll have a presentation, we'll have discussion, public comment, and voting, and then we'll move on to the next item. But if you go one more slide. This is a new slide. It's one you haven't seen before, but it's part of the conversations that I've had with all of you, where we'll talk about the millage, we'll talk about the fire assessment, we'll talk about everything. And I know that the public's concern and the council's concern is across the board, how does that shake out? And so we had our workshop last month. We had a very good conversation. You, as a council, made it very clear of the direction that you wanted us to go in. And so I want to give you a little bit of an overview before I turn it over to Emil to go through item by item. And so where we are, the first item on there is taxes. In a current fiscal year, if you have a house that's assessed at $500,000, your tax rate at 4.25 mils is $2,125. On the trim notice, that dropped to $2,075 because the millage changed to 4.15. The budget we're presenting to you tonight comes in at a millage rate of 3.9. So that 2125 in the current year drops to 1950. So we're trying to be judicious in the use of funds. We've cut the millage rate 0.35 from the current year, and so I think we're in pretty good shape there. On the fire assessment, the current year is 690, and on the trim notice, we were at 889. And if you recall, last year, the fire assessment actually came in at 764, and we used some excess funds to buy that down to $690. What we're proposing to do is use some surplus funds again, which was, the council was very clear, we've got more money than we need, let's give some back to the residents. So we took that 889 fire assessment, which was on the trim notice, down to last year's 764.44. Solid waste, we all know there's an increase there. I think that's part of why the public is here tonight. The first line is the solid waste, which is just garbage and recycling, is 322. That's going to 540. Bulk is also up. So what we did was we took an average of the tranches just to give you a comparison. So if you have that $500,000 assessed property, your current across the board, you're just over $3,500. On the trim notice, that was at $4,000. We were able to drop that combined bottom line almost $200 from what was on the trim notice by trying to spend some of our reserves. We've made some cuts and trying to give some of that money back to the public. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of an overview to let you know we heard you from the workshop. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Emil to go kind of item by item, section by section. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Andy. Next slide. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, and the public watching here and at home. We're pretty much going to start going over the three different aspects of what the public hearing is about. First, we're going to touch on the solid waste rates. This is a very straightforward because there hasn't been any changes after the budget workshop and the proposed budget. As the town administrator indicated, The rates are being proposed based on a bid for which the town selected through a selection committee, the second lowest with the highest quality and services. And the rates being provided here is pretty much what was presented during the budget workshop. Here it's a consolidation of what those changes would be. Andy touched base on the summary sheet. For the cost per unit, there's going to be an increase of $217.67, which is about 67.42% when we compare that to last year's rate. The bulk waste, and this is again the cost per unit increase, an average based on the parcel lot dimension that the town has already predetermined. That's going to represent an increase of $212.42, which is about 53.51% when compared to the previous year. In average, the increase is about $430 or 60%. Although this is not part of the operating budget or the solid waste budget, it's something that is pertinent to the citizens of the town, which is why we wanted to include this in here, that there's going to be an annual cost of any customer who requests a 96-gallon cart, and there's going to be a flat fee of $300.12, and that's basically cost recoveries, and that is what it costing the town for the extra waste and services. And this amount is going to be billed as at the time of request, and is going to be included into next year's on an annual basis. The way we're contemplating to process this transaction is basically we processing an invoice in July. The finance department will do that, and we provide ample time to the citizen to pay with a due date of before or by September 30th.
Yeah, Mayor, if I may. Because of the concern from the public, we took the solid waste item first. So if we could get a motion to take that out of order and get that read into the record, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Do I have a motion to move item number 6 up to before item number 5?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Thank you. Please call the roll. Are we all right?
Councilmember Albritton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hartman?
Yes.
Councilmember Kaczynski?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jablonski?
Yes.
Mayor Bright Cruz?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I can read the item into the record.
Yes, please.
Thank you. A resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Southwest Ranches, Florida, relating to the provision of solid waste services, facilities, and programs to residential properties in the Town of Southwest Ranches, Florida for fiscal year 2022-2023, commencing October 1, 2022, providing authority for solid waste services assessment, providing purpose and definitions, providing findings, incorporating the solid waste special assessment methodology report, providing for an exemption for veteran service-connected service-connected total and permanent disability, approving the assessment roll and providing an effective date. That was
Great, thank you. All right. I want to, Bob, if I can call on you. I know I saw your articles that you've written on this. I know you've done an extensive amount of research and looking into it. If maybe you could just take a few minutes and walk us through this, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Andy, when you or somebody has an opportunity, maybe they can bring up the pails that we're going to be using going forward, or the carts. But folks, I've gotten hit with hundreds of questions since word got out, since our last meeting, that the prices were going up. People were having a challenge understanding the way it's going to be procured in the future, or starting out in 2 weeks. So also, Facebook has been alive with questions. And since it's not a good idea for me to jump on Facebook, according to the lawyers that put us through the ethics training every year. I've held back, but I also asked the administration to put together some FAQs for us to use to answer the public's questions. And this is kind of a summation of what has been gathered from all the different sources of questions. So this is to try to answer some. So there's no revenue in this contract for the town. This is purely a pass-through. Every dollar that the town collects is paid straight through to Waste Management. Staying with Waste Pro wasn't an option. They declined to continue providing us service after October 1st. Fortunately, Waste Management stepped up, and they are offering sooner than what was originally expected, but Waste Pro did not submit a bid for a continued contract. They pulled away from us completely. We went to an 8-year contract to lower the increase on the advice of our consultants. This allows the vendor to amortize their equipment over a longer period of time, thus bringing down the costs to the town. This contract does not require a 5-0 vote. That only applies to land use and zoning changes. There were questions about that. The current bulk fee method, which is based on your lot size, was actually established 10 years ago by the council. That's nothing new. That's a process we've been using ever since. All the new waste management carts will have RFID tags on it. So if the truck doesn't come down your street, the town can get a report. If they're not meeting their service levels, the town can see that. So that's an important thing because there's no excuses in front of the hard data. So again, each one will have an RFID tag and we'll know when your garbage has been picked up. The 96-gallon container is 50% larger than our current recycling, and we don't have one here, but it's twice the size of our current recycling. So that's it on the left. This is the 65-gallon cart directly in front of me here, and people have an option as to which one they want. If it's a family of 2 and they don't think they're going to need something that big, they can request a smaller one instead. If you recall in the original information that was sent out, there was a $100 delivery charge for the second cart. So if you want 2 carts, you pay the 5 and change that you saw up on the presentation a few minutes ago, and you would pay $300 for each additional cart. Waste Management is going to waive the fee for a second one if you need it. So you won't have to pay the $100 fee for the garbage and the delivery of the bin itself. I should say you don't have to pay the $100 for the new bin and the delivery of it, but the $300 service fee for annual pickup, that remains. And that's, again, based on the actual cost of collection and disposal. If you want an additional recycling bin, they're a $90 one-time fee. Your second one doesn't cost you any more. There's no additional costs to having that. The recycling, I don't like to say they're picking it up for free because we definitely get charged for it overall. But at the end of the day, the second container is the only thing that'll cost you, and then they'll pick that up until you move. If you have a second cart that's compatible, you can use that at no cost. So if you have 2 blue containers from however you have them, you don't have to pay anything, and they'll use that. If you want a smaller, as I mentioned, a smaller cart, it's available at no extra cost. Additional carts can be obtained anytime. You don't have to, next week, contact the town for a second cart. What we're recommending is go with the one that they drop off, start using it. If that doesn't meet your needs, then at that point, call. It'll be $300 for the for the annual service on it, and again, they're going to drop off the second one for free. Just some other important things, because this kind of stuff happens when you have these carts. If the cart gets damaged or stolen, get a police report, because otherwise Waste Management will charge you. They'll just look at it as, you're doing something else with it. For disabled residents, and we have some, there is a side yard service, so they'll come pick it up at your house, basically for no charge. We'll be using the same recycling containers as we currently have. Some areas like Rolling Oaks, Green Meadows, Deems Ranches, recycling has been moved to Friday. Bulk pickup or bulk piles and requirements remain the same. It's still the 12 yards that we have today. You can put it out the weekend before your pickup. So basically the rules are the same there. However, if you add more than the 12 yards, you'll be charged $35.90 per cubic yard over the limit. Similar procedure to what we have today. There is a procedure, I believe, in the paperwork that was sent out to everybody on, actually, I think it's in the town newsletter. In any case, if you do want to put out organic debris on your bulk pile, and obviously if you have the room, you can put it in plastic bags. Color doesn't matter. Some cities will require a particular color. We don't. But just put it on top of the pile of bulk. Let's see. Rolling Oaks, which is Zone 8. Hancock, north of Sterling, is Zone 7. 190th is Zone 3. And 202, Zone 9, there was some questions on that in the beginning. Both sides are now set up with pickup on the same day. The way things were, I believe, is one side of the street was being picked up on one day and the other side of the street was another day. The town's made arrangements so they just pick up both sides and you're not looking at the bulk laying around for a continued period. The bulk map changes that I just mentioned are on the website. They're also in the paperwork that everybody's received. I believe there's paperwork that's coming along with the containers as well that further defines some of these things. But the changes that they are doing are reflected to start on January the 1st. So it's your same garbage pickup until January the 1st, then things will start to change. So hopefully that clears up, like I said, a ton of questions that were out on Facebook. We've all been receiving phone calls. Can't tell you how many I've received in the last couple of weeks with simple questions. I mean, how much is it for the second garbage pail? Now it's free, but at the time it was $100. So that's all I have on it. If you need more information, and I've been talking about this at the HOAs, residents calling, all sorts of things, just to try to get the information out. If you have any questions on this, my phone number is everywhere. So just give me a call, and I'd be happy to answer any additional questions. Great. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. Appreciate it. Gary, some thoughts on this?
Yeah, just wanted to add something on, piggyback on top of what Bob said. In case of Rolling Oaks, it's actually two zones. West of 178th is Zone 11, and the east side, which includes 178th, on both sides of 178th, is Zone 8. The same thing applies for Hancock with Zone 7 and 10. Country Estates was Zone 3 and 6, and Country Estates further west with Zone 6 and 12. So just wanted to make sure that was clear, that it just was that one street that was both sides. So therefore, we're not looking at bulk piles, 24/7 every week. So I just wanted to clarify that, that's all.
Good. Thank you, Gary. Any other comments from the council before I open up to the public?
Yeah, Steve, if
Yeah,
you
go
would,
ahead, Jim.
please. Real quick, I want to, again, commend the group that we hired that put this process in place and graded the 4 contractors. And I didn't realize that there were 6 panel members that sat down and went through these bids, and with the criteria that our consultant gave them points in each category. And Waste Management came out on top from all 6 in the categories, on top in all but 1, and that was price. And they came in as the second lowest overall price. So I was really pleased to see that they put through a whole process here and took the time to grade them on points and all, and come up with the best one that we could. So we're getting the best service for the best price that we could get, and we're not beating them to death and getting cheap, and then it ends up like it did with Waste Pro, them not servicing us because they just got beat to death,
Right.
So thank you.
Good.
Yeah, and
Thank
I'd
you,
like to emphasize on that, the council has nothing to do with that selection committee. We're not allowed in there, we don't know anything, and then it comes back to us as a recommendation. So we really have no
against the
clue
law.
what they're doing.
It's against the law.
Yeah,
So-
it's against the law.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
All right, yeah. Commend the vendor that did the analysis as well. And I think it's a better deal than we had in the past with Waste Pro. My phone rang every week about a complaint about Waste Pro, so I think this is a positive change. And then one issue that Bob had touched on that I was unaware of until it was brought to me with and it's been going on 10 years, has to do with the bulk pickup, where if a larger property owner is making a larger contribution for the bulk pickup, this is for a future council to evaluate, that should also allow them a proportional increase in the amount of bulk they should be able to put out. And that's just my personal opinion. I mean, it's further contractual negotiation way down the road.
Yep.
It's just something that I think is important.
Yeah, I think we should talk about that after our budget season is over, because
Yeah.
that ship has sailed, but
Right.
I think we need to address as well.
Right. Great, appreciate all that input. You covered a lot of what I was going to say. I just would add one thing that I just wanted to thank the residents, because it was probably close to 6 months ago, probably actually more than 6 months ago now that I think about it, that I wrote in the newsletter for public feedback on this. We knew this contract was coming up and asked for feedback, and you all did a great job in providing that feedback. And then we had a workshop here, and we had a really good turnout then as well to help formulate and give our consultant the feedback that they needed to be able to help formulate this contract as best we could do it, and really put the pieces together. So that was really appreciated, and I appreciate everybody's input into this process. All right, so with that, let me open this up to the public so we can hear. We've got a good group out, and I know there's some concerns, so we're looking forward to hearing those.
Bill Hollingsworth, 199th Avenue, and I hope you'll understand me. My head's not screwed on straight yet. My question is this. We are taking this contract at a time when there has been a monstrous amount of inflation and price increases across the board, and we have a very high price increase on this contract. Is there anything within the contract that says that if the prices come down for the tipping fees, that sort of stuff, those savings will be returned to the town and in the price for the next year? Is there anything in that way? So we can hopefully, maybe, if something comes along in the future, decrease the price to the residents.
Great, thank you, Noel. So what I'm going to do is I'm writing down these questions as they come up, and so then we'll hear the public comment, and then we will address the questions after the public comment session is closed. Yeah, Mary Ann.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see everyone is healthy and well.
Great.
Just to address something that David said.
Mary Ann, if I sorry to interrupt you. If you could
Mary Ann
state-
Allen, 12701 Mustang Trail, still here.
Awesome, thank you, Mary Ann.
So, as to what David said, I've been here since 1989 when we had bulk pickup every week. Then we got increased and got dropped to twice a month, which is also a 50% increase there. Now, regardless of the property you have, you're entitled to a bulk pickup now once every 2 weeks, whether you use it or not. And many times, I don't use it. And most of the properties, I would say, are now under 5 acres. Most of the big plots are gone. So David's suggestion, in all honesty, would be an unfair move, because many of the properties don't use bulk pickup every week if you drive around. So trying to target more money out of a diminishing, population, like there's very few big properties left. So I would not want to go that route and add more burden to the people already. Because we were used to 4-time pickup, and now we only have 2. And now you want to charge more if you have a little bigger property. And most properties are clean now. We don't need to have, clearing of land, which was a problem. People were paying bulk pickup to pick up all their bulk. They'd hand the drivers some extra money. But that's not going on so much anymore. And just to say about inflation, I thought the increase, it's going to cost me over $1,000, what the town is costing me in fire and waste management in just this year. And hopefully this isn't a trend that's going to be every year, this rise, rise, rise. I know you're doing your best to get grants. And if the town makes money, if you could possibly give us a break on some things, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. Yeah, please just come up.
Good afternoon. Rose Williams, 6011 Holity Trail. I just like to clarify certain things that Councilman Hartman said. I called the town and I got I had different information. The lady told me we had to pay $312 for an extra container. So I just need to clarify with you, you just said a second container was free. Is that correct?
The container is free. The service to dump it when they come to pick up your garbage, that's the $300.12.
Okay, so that's not what she said. She said you had to pay $300 for an extra container, and then I had to pay $100 to deliver the container. So that's $400 just to have a second container. So I need to clarify that.
Yeah, maybe we'll give them the bullet points that I have here.
Okay, so my question, I'm sure everyone here, I've been in the ranches for almost 29 years. And things have been dwindling down. The more you go, the size of the bulk. Now we have one container that they'll pick up, right? And God knows if you drive around the ranches, I live on Holity, I see Sterling, there are people with 10, 12 bags out there, right? This will probably fit 3 garbage bags. And now we have to pay $300 extra for them to pick up a second container, right? I mean, we obviously don't pay minimum taxes in this area. We came here, we decide to pay the taxes here. What's being built around me? I don't know what's being built around me some days when I look through my window. But I don't know how that's feasible to be charging us an extra $300. And if you want a third one, that's another $300, I assume. Is that correct? So now we're paying, besides our taxes, the way they are, $900 just to pick up our garbage. I just think it's unfortunate that I've been out here so long and things are just not getting better. It's getting worse. We're no longer the same. We're the same as Cooper City, Pembroke Pines anymore with this. And that's just what I think.
Thank you, Rose.
Good evening. I'm Edwin Negron. I live at 4711 Southwest 199th Avenue. And I'm here on behalf also of Christ Covenant Church, which is 188th Avenue. I'd like to ask about the fire assessment. At last meeting, we spoke about it. We had a question about it when we asked for some documentation or some finalization on what the fees were going to be. And I heard that there were some discounts and rebates applied today, but I didn't hear a final number and what was going to be happening with the nonprofits. So that was the question today. If I can have the documentation or...
Yeah, that's actually going to be the next item on the agenda is the fire. This is for the waste, but I hear what you're asking.
Oh, yeah. I see, sorry, I seen it on the screen, so I figured it was...
Yeah, it's okay.
All right.
It's all right.
So I should I come back or...
Yeah, come back.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Mark Aldrich from Rolling Oaks. I've kind of recently joined the graduate group of retirees out in Rolling Oaks, and I know a lot of people that are living on fixed incomes. And if your cable TV company or your telephone company called you up and said, we're raising your rate 60%, you'd say, sayonara. You're not going to pay that. So it kind of raises the hair on the back of your neck when you see a bill that's 60% higher than it was last year. Fortunately, I'm not going to have to make sacrifices in order to pay that bill, but there are some people that are. So I just would like to hear someone tell me how they can justify sending that out without maybe doing some further research or finding another way to handle this. The contract, I was surprised to hear, was an 8-year contract, and I just wondered, is that a fixed contract, or do we get an annual increase every year on that? And one other thing, Waste Management sent out a notice to everybody, and in that notice, they said that you can put your bulk pickup out 1 day prior. I don't believe that was correct.
That's correct, right. That was not correct.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mark.
Hi, Jennifer Dacton, 6120 Southwest 173rd Way. I had a couple of questions. Was any research done as far as the amount of trash can or trash that Southwest Ranches residents actually put out in their cans? Not Weston, not Cooper City, not Davie, but Southwest Ranches residents to think that one 60-gallon can is going to be enough. Our garbage is going up $535.23 on the proposed budget over what we paid last year. We're getting less and being able to get charged double what I got charged last year. You said that 10 years ago the rule was made that they would charge bulk by the size of your property. What's the difference between a 2.5-acre size of property that's full of bushes and weeds that uses their bulk every day or a 5-acre property that's super clear? Why are we having to pay double what everybody else is and only allowed to have 12 yards? Why was garbage not charged the same way then? If you were going to charge bulk by the size of your property, why was garbage not charged by the size of your house or the number of residents you have living in it? Because that would change the amount of garbage. It was also brought to my attention that it's thought that people with businesses, agricultural and non-agricultural, are the reason why we're going down to 1 can, because it's believed that we are abusing garbage, and we have been abusing garbage for the last, I don't know, we've been here since '69, so I guess us agricultural people have been abusing it. Why was it an 8-year contract? We've had them before and we had problems with them. If we have problems with them, are we able to change it? Because for us that have lived here forever and remember having issues with them, you know, it kind of makes you a little nervous that now we're signing an 8-year contract. Does the council get to go over the contract? You said that they couldn't be involved in picking which garbage company we thought was best, but do you guys actually get to sit down and say, hey, maybe 1 garbage can's not enough, or maybe 8 years is a little bit long, you know, maybe we should do 4 and see if they're actually worth having again? That's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
Hi, everybody. Debbie Eiton, 14521 West Palomino Drive. So a couple of concerns that we have, everybody else is kind of voicing them. Why are we in an 8-year contract? We're in a contract right now that we have problems with. We're stuck. The garbage company that we currently have, their truck has broken down twice on my street, where it sat for hours in the middle of the road. I personally called the garbage company. They don't do anything about it. They're digging up the yard in front of my house that I have to keep filling at my expense. Now we're getting into a contract for 8 years. How do we know we're going to be happy with this contract? First of all, the cost is more. We're getting less service. You know, there's accusations flying around about people are using it commercially. There's like all kinds of things happening with this, and I just think we're jumping into a contract, and we really probably haven't done our due diligence on it or really had enough conversation on it to get into this contract. And we're going to get stuck. We're stuck with who we have now with the mess. Literally, my husband's had to fill the front of our yard repeatedly. They don't clean it up. Half the time they don't take the garbage. We got to go take it back out for fear of getting cited. When we had Bergeron, the guy would come by, he would pick up the stuff out of your yard. He would get off the truck, he would rake up everything in your yard and make sure that he took everything that was there. They were amazing. We never had missed garbage. We never had left stuff. I didn't have craters in my front yard that I was having to pay for sand to fill it because I don't want to get fined or cited from the town because I have a hole in my front yard. So I think that there needs to be some more discussion on this. And one 96-gallon can is really, it just doesn't work for everybody. We're a smaller family, but we use the garbage for a lot of different things around our house. We have animals, just like everybody else has. I have dogs. I have horses. You know, we pay taxes like everybody else. I don't get agricultural exemption on my property, so I don't get a break. So I think the town council needs to look into this a little bit further. Thanks.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Manon Hagan Stevens, 4721 Southwest 164th Terrace. I think my biggest thing I'm concerned about here, what I've heard tonight, is the fact that I always said it was the 5-0 vote, and you guys are like, no, we don't have anything to do with it. It's brought to us later, and then this is what we've dealt with. So how does that process work that we're not more involved, or you guys aren't more involved, or... I mean, that's a big jump. We have a lot of really older folks out here. I'm sure it's hitting them hard in the pocket. And frankly, my family's not even that huge when we go through that much trash. God forbid I clean out a drawer or something. Or you have a, party, a small party, so don't get Jim mad at me. So anyway, these are my main concerns, and I really would like some clarification about how this process works. Because, we're counting on you guys to figure it out for us, and then to hear like, oh no, that's not us. Well, then who is it? Anyway, have a good night.
Maybe Andy can walk you through the process.
Yeah, I am.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you again. I don't come out that often. Anyways, Tracy Swate, 5110 Southwest 201 Terrace. That's so many different properties I've had. I have to kind of roll my eyes and remember where I live. Anyways, is that the size garbage can I'm going to have to be pulling out? Because I'm like tiny. I have like this size maybe, and then I got 2 of them, and then that's a little easier. But that's going to be impossible for me to tilt. Impossible. So my trash is going to live in the backyard or in the front yard so y'all can see it and I can go, yay. Because that trash can cannot be rolled back and forth by me. That was not taken into consideration. That a single woman at 90 pounds, 5 foot tall, was going to haul a 4 foot tall garbage can. Now, you need to take that into consideration. Now, I don't know, you probably already signed the contract, so we're in it. Now, what can we do to accommodate certain people that may need accommodations, that maybe are disabled, have problems lifting that, single women out here? That's not right. That's going to be a hardship. And the other thing was, I was like telling everybody to lift the lid up and just pile it high like a mountain, but then the rainwater gets in it, and then how are you going to empty it? That's a big freaking one garbage can. I'd rather have like 3 of these. I'm serious. But I know we contracted. I know that's hard. Once you're in it, how to get around it. And that's what we're going to have to look into. How do we get around it? Because we do have the acreage size homes. We have the big size homes. And one size does not fit all in Southwest Ranches. It never has. And it never will. And if you continue to do that, or to think it's like planned development out here everywhere, it's not. Some areas, yes. Some areas, no. And we need to take that in consideration on everything we do. Be it road work, be it swales, be it drainage, be it anything. This is not a one size, one place townhome like an HOA. It is not. Please take that into consideration. Some people will need more garbage cans. Some people may not be able to haul that big giant garbage can like me. So I kind of got the idea we have an 8-year contract. That seems long term. We should have went with 2 or 4. And now I'm finding out just listening tonight, that you all were not part of it. Now, how can that be? You are the leaders. You are part of it, 100%. There is no blame the other guy, blame the left, blame the right. There is none of that out here. This is the ranches. We did not want to be Weston. We did not want to be Pines. And if I wanted that, I would have lived at my mom's townhouse growing up, where she got one garbage can for a single woman in a townhouse. These are the ranches. This is big yards, big houses. What would make you think that that was going to accommodate everybody? No way. So let's think what we can do. Is there an alternative? And we're not going to say, well, you use more, so therefore you should pay more. Because I don't have kids in school, so why should I pay taxes to schools? I don't drive, so why should I pay for the roads? When we do taxation, we want it to be equal across the board. Everybody pitches in. That we do. Whether one person uses it more than the other person. I mean, I use the fire department. Should I pay for it? No. Because that's the way we're doing the garbage. And we should not be doing that. So we need to think about that. And then talk to the waste management. See what we can do in that contract. Is there alternatives? And that's going to be your job now.
Great.
So please do that.
Thank you,
guys.
Tracy. Any other public comment? All right. Oh, go ahead.
It's James Starkweather, 14531 Luray Road. Can you guys tell me how many of you knew that the bigger lots were paying more than the little lots?
Of course.
How about you, Jim? Did you know?
For bulk?
Yeah.
Yes.
You knew.
Yes.
David didn't know.
Of course.
You knew?
Yeah.
Steve knew?
Absolutely.
Then how come we didn't do something about making it even now? Why are we waiting for the next council?
I'll walk through that, okay, Jim?
Perfect. Thank you.
I know there's a lot of thoughts on this. I don't want to close public comment too soon. Anybody else want to speak that hasn't spoken? All right. Thank you. Listen, I appreciate everybody being here this evening. I know there's other things you'd rather be doing than here talking about this. So I appreciate that you have taken time out of your evening to come out. I wrote down, I think I captured all the questions that were there. If I missed something or if I misspeak, please, folks, jump in there, correct me. All right, so I'm going to go through it and try and cover everything. So the question was, one of the questions had to do with cost, and we're in an inflationary period, which we are, and certainly these costs are reflective of that, and part of the reason why it's going up, another big reason why it's going up is because in our previous contract, the vendor that we had, we got a rock bottom price and only realized once we were into it that we're also getting rock bottom service. And so we made a conscious decision this time to not do that. That service was critical. It makes no sense to pay a rock bottom price if you're not happy with what you get. You're still not worth it. So that was what that selection team went through, and they rated this based on all the different qualities of it and then also the price, two separate things. But as far as the inflationary period and the cost, this contract does have a true-up clause in it. And so what that means is if that the amount of debris that's generated is less than what's expected, then yes, the rates will come down. Of course, on the other hand, if what they're looking at, if it was to generate more, then our rates would go up. But I think this time we did a pretty good job of trying to look at that from a very conservative standpoint. So I don't, well, we'll see what happens. I'm not going to make any claims up here. I can't predict that sort of a thing. But yes, If the amount of debris goes down, then yes, the price will go down. So that is definitely a possibility. Before I get into the next questions, I know a lot of them were around the process itself. So let me walk through that, because what was set up here is accurate, but there's a lot more to it than that, and I want to make sure everybody understands the process. And this may be a situation where you all, or Andy, you may want to jump in there if I miss something. But so we understood, we started on this process probably about a year ago, knowing that this contract was going to run out at the end of September of this year. And at that point, the first job, which is clearly the job of the council, is to get feedback from the residents of what's important and what's not important. And as I said earlier in the meeting, we went out and did that. I know, I wrote an article in the newsletter and asked for residents to call me, to email me, to text me, however it was best, to contact me and let me know those things that were important, that we wanted to keep, and those things that maybe were extra, we didn't really need to pay for it when it wasn't worth it. And you all did a great job of doing that. And I tracked all of those items. I put together, as I have a tendency to do, I put together a spreadsheet for it with everything that was in there, and I totaled up all of the pluses and the minuses and everything on there. I recognized that, right off the bat, I knew there was going to be some issues because some people wanted more service and some people said we're paying too much. I don't need that, like pickups once a week or twice a week, Some people said, there's no way we can get rid of the twice a week. Some people say we're paying extra, let's go down to once a week. And so it wasn't like everybody had the same thought. So we had to kind of work through that. But we did, and we found out those things that were most critical and most important, and as I said earlier, I really appreciate all the feedback from the residents on that. At that point, we knew this was going to be we could see what was happening in the economy and the whole 9 yards, and so we knew this was going to be critical to pick the right vendor at this time. So what we did was, rather than internally doing everything ourselves, we actually went out and we hired a consultant that this is all they do. And they know the things, the clauses to put in the contracts. They know the most important things. They gave us some feedback on things that other towns and cities and municipalities are doing so that we could consider those and potentially bring those into the contract or not bring those into the contract. And so we got a lot of feedback. And all that is the council working with the administration, right? So I don't want anyone to think that the council did not have a part in this or we're stepping away from it. Our job is to represent you. That's the one job we have, and we take that very seriously. And that's what we tried very hard in this case to do, and we tried very hard to gather feedback from the town. Once we get all that feedback, we present, we talk, we have a workshop here, and we kind of weigh it out, and we give the administration direction on what we feel the residents are requesting that we have in the contract. Now, bear in mind, at this point, we don't know what the costs are. We have a pretty good idea that the costs are going to be going up, but we don't know what they are yet. We're talking about the things that we want in the contract, the things that are important to us, the things that are not important to us. And so that's the feedback that we give to the administration and we gave to the consultant. Now at that point, it goes into another phase, and that's really the contracting phase, the bidding phase. And that's the phase that Vice Mayor Jablonski was talking about that we cannot participate in. It's actually illegal for us to participate in. So there's a selection committee that then goes out and gets all the information that's brought in by all the vendors that want to participate. We tell them what we want. They show up for a meeting to talk about, to determine whether they're interested or not. And we actually had great feedback there. We had a lot of folks, a lot of vendors come in. And then they learn and decide, and then they go back out, and then they just make a final decision whether they actually want to bid on this project. And we had a good number of vendors actually bid on it. And then that committee, that selection committee, looks at it, as I said earlier, they look at it from two ways. They look at it from, they rank all the vendors based on the service and how they completed that bidding document, how well they answered the questions, how good their references are, how their service matches up for what we want. And so they rank that in a numerical ranking, and then they also take the costs. That's the first time in this whole process that we actually get to see the cost that's associated with it. So now that committee has all the information to make the selection. And so what they do is they make not the final selection, but they look at all that and they make a recommendation. And this is what we were talking about earlier, that WM, Waste Management, was far and away got the highest points. It was the preferred vendor. They were not the lowest cost vendor. They were the second lowest cost vendor, but they were close to the lowest cost vendor. There was not a large gap there. And so the combination of them being the best at what we were looking for and being just slightly off the lowest cost made them the vendor that selection committee then recommended to the council. So then the council can get back involved in the process again. But for that section of it, we're not allowed to be involved in it, okay? So then it comes back to us, and then this is where we start getting involved. You start to hear about it, and where we show up here and we start having the workshops. So that's how the whole process works. I hope that answers some questions, helps out. You know, we try very hard to get as much resident input into this process as we possibly could, and obviously we have to follow the law as well. Marion, I think you asked the question about, hey, you know, can we give back something to the residents on this? Well, in fact, we are. We looked at reserves, and you know, reserves are money that come into the town because we feel like it's for two reasons. One is kind of a I don't want to call it, I guess maybe I could call it a rainy day thing, because a lot of it is tied to hurricanes, really rainy days, where we have to have reserves for situations like hurricanes, where we have this huge expense for the town that we have to front to clean up the town before FEMA comes back and pays us. And so we do that through reserves and through a line of credit. And so we've been building up these reserves, but there comes to a point where, hey, this is y'all's money. It's not the town's money. It's not our money. You know, this is the residents' money. And we looked at that this year, and we're like, you know what? Our reserves, I mean, it's great to have high reserves, but at the end of the day, it comes to a point where it's too high, and you all should have the money back. And so that's what we did in this case, was we actually bought down the amount of the increase so that it's not as high. I think this actually, this is where it may be corrected. This is on the fire, or is this on the waste? It may be on the fire. It's on the fire. So we didn't do it on the waste, but we did it on the fire.
And the millage.
And the millage, yeah. So it's not on this particular one, but we did recognize the fact that there was extra funding there, and we are trying to give it back to the residents where it belongs. So we talked about the two cans. What size? I would encourage everybody to try one of the large cans. That's a really large can. I mean, it's a really large can. I don't know how else to say it. It's really large. So I would encourage you to try that and see how it works. If it's not enough, then, you know, we did set up the opportunity to get a second can. We did get them to waive the $100 delivery fee. So we're trying to make that as economical as possible. But I think that's I think a bigger garbage can than you've probably been used to. For those, Tracy, certainly you can, in fact, request a smaller can. You can request this size. It's a 1-for-1. It's not a 2-for-1. You can get two in smaller cans, but it's going to cost you that extra $300. It's going to cost you that extra $300. That's right. That's right. So she asked if it's going to cost you that whether you use it or you don't use it, and the answer is yes, it is. It's an annual cost that you would be paying. But I think a lot more is going to fit into that 96-gallon can than perhaps you're thinking. So. No, they cannot. I'm thinking if any of the council promised to pull out people's trash in their campaigns, but I don't think I heard that, so I'm going to say no to that. But what I will say is that if you have a disability and you are physically not able to do that, we were able to get Waste Management to actually provide a side yard service to where they will go and pull the can out and empty it and then bring it back for you. Obviously, that needs to be a true situation. Okay, I'm not saying one way or the other, but it needs to. All right. Let me finish. This is not a back and forth. Okay, let me finish, and then we'll see where we are. So there was a question about cost increases in the future. There is cost of living increases, but like I say, we'll deal with the true up and we'll see where that goes. So we're going to have to see how that works out. I don't want anybody leaving here saying that the mayor said that we're going to have our costs go down next year. I don't want anybody leaving saying that the mayor said our costs are going to go up. We're going to have to wait and see. A comment was made that there's this feeling out there that the council or the town or somebody is indicating that ag folks are taking advantage of the system and abusing it. I know I don't believe that. I don't think anybody up here believes that. And if that's circulating around here, I just want to flat out say that's absolutely not true. We are all extremely appreciative of the ag community here. You all were the pioneers of what we are here as a town, and we sincerely, absolutely appreciate you. And I certainly, I don't think anybody up here feels that they're taking advantage of the situation at all. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear. Why an 8-year contract? It's a good question, a legitimate question. Certainly it's something that we talked about. One of the things that, one of the key factors in making the 8-year commitment is the fact that we have worked with Waste Management before, WM they go by now. We have worked with them before, and they were, I would say they were the best vendor we ever had. Now somebody brought up Sun Bergeron. They did the bulk pickup and
SWS.
SWS, yeah. They did the bulk pickup, and they did a great job of that. But what we're talking about here with the cans, that's Waste Management, WM. And when they did that, they did a fantastic job for us. We had great service with them. And so we have every expectation that they will do a great job for us in the future. Why 8 years? You can see the jump in cost from the old contract to the new contract. Do I want to do that again anytime soon? Absolutely not. So we looked for that sweet spot there where we weren't committed forever, but we would not have another big jump like this anytime soon. We do have obviously out clauses in the contract for non-performance. And if there was an issue like that, we could certainly terminate the contract early. I had Keith pull out the contract in case there's any specific questions about that. But certainly, if things go south in a serious way, there are out clauses to the contract. I think that covered it. The bulk methodology, yeah, right. Thank you. So yeah, let me talk about that. So that's probably of the phone calls that I've received, probably the biggest question was the one around why are the larger properties paying more? Why are they paying by square foot or by acreage? And well, we all pay by acreage, but why is it based on that so that larger properties are So here's, it's kind of a story, so let's start there. So when we looked at this last, which it's been this way for a long time, but when we looked at this last, the question, obviously the goal for this is to be as fair as possible. There are always exceptions to no matter how you do the methodology. There's always going to be some exceptions. I know there's folks in town that never use bulk, and they're paying for it, right? They never use it. Certainly not fair. So there's always exceptions to the rule that will pop up, but our goal as a council is to try and make it as fair as possible. So there's kind of two ways in my mind to make this fair. One way is that those with the larger properties should be able to put out more bulk out there and have it picked up, right? That seems pretty darn fair to me. And so I totally get where residents are bringing that up as why don't we do it that way? And that's certainly not this time around, but 10 years ago, or I actually thought it was longer than that, but I heard tonight it was 10 years ago, so I'm going to go with 10 years. So, but at any rate, when we looked at that last time, the vendor said, listen, we don't have the information on our truck to know what size properties these are, okay? So to put up limits that vary based on the size of the property, it could not be enforced at the vendor level. And so we're like, okay, understand that. So that was not really an option for us. Understand that it makes sense, understand that it's intuitive, and that would be great if it works, but it's not a way that we could enforce it and make it work. So then what was the next option? So the next option was, well, at the highest level, overall, there are exceptions, but at the highest level, we anticipate that the larger properties will generate more bulk than the smaller properties. Is that always the case? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Some properties, have very little vegetation. Some large properties have very little vegetation. Some small properties have a lot of vegetation. And so it certainly is not true in all the cases, but generally speaking, it is true. And so the thought was this, that let's set up the pickup so that if you live on one of the larger properties, you can have your bulk picked up. You can use it to the full use. You do the full 12 cubic yards once every other week, and it should be sufficient to cover your property. And frankly, for the large properties, we expect that it's used to the max pretty much all the time. If you're on a smaller property, then on those properties, you are not going to there's always exceptions, but for the most part, you're not going to use that to that level. If we were to do a field trip and drive by my property this evening, you would see 4 palm fronds sitting in the front of my swale. That's what I pulled out this past weekend. That was all the bulk I had. So the smaller properties overall are going to use less. And so it was based on the fact that larger properties in general will use the service more. Smaller properties will use the service less. And at the end of the day, what the town gets charged for is the weight of the debris that gets picked up and tipped and disposed of, okay? So we want to be able to distribute that cost to the town, to our residents, as equitably as possible, given the limitations of that we've got trucks driving around picking up debris, and they have a limited amount of knowledge and information available to them. So that's how we got there. I totally understand that in some cases it appears to be unfair, but I can tell you sincerely, from a town council standpoint, from a town standpoint, our goal is to try and make it as fair as we possibly can given the limitations we have. Based on what we've heard tonight and what I've heard on the council, we're going to look at it again and see if there's anything we can do to adjust that. This is an 8-year contract, but I want to be clear that we're not locked into that methodology for 8 years, okay? That methodology is something that we generally look at every 4 to 5 years to see if it's still valid or not. We looked at it about 2 years ago, and so, but based on what I'm hearing tonight is we may look at it again. So we're hearing what you have to say, and we want to be responsive to that. What else did I miss? Anything else? Go for it.
Yeah, I got
Go for it. The mic's all yours.
All right. We had a workshop back in February 26th. And when I was sitting here listening, I did not hear one resident say they wanted Waste Pro. Not one. And so we had to go out and find somebody better. And I'm confident that Waste Management, WM, will be better. And Mary Ann, where you had mentioned when we had bulk every week, also during that meeting I learned that it was abused with the landscapers coming into the town from their working east, and they're coming west, and they dump in our town, and that would add to our costs and unreasonably increase our budget. So that's why I learned that it was backed off to 2 weeks. Now, I don't know if it's Bob or Mayor, I need a better explanation as to the extra bin that's being, if a resident purchases an extra bin, what is the charge rate? Is it based upon a calendar year or from the time they purchase it?
My understanding is that it's based on the fiscal year of the town, which starts on October 1st. So it's going to be $300 per can, whether or not you choose to get the can on the 1st of October or 6 months later, halfway through the year. So what I would recommend is that you try us out for 30 days, or maybe you'll know after a week it's not sufficient, But I would try it out the way it is, because it is probably much larger than what you're used to. And then if it's not, request the second can as soon as possible, because that $300 is going to run out at the end of September of 2023.
Okay, and additional, and I just want to make sure that everybody's clear that the contract that is being entered into is the town doesn't make any additional amount from that. It is exactly what Waste Management is telling us what their contractual rate is. Right. That the town doesn't have a fee that's tacked onto that. Town doesn't make anything off of that. That goes into the truth in contracting that Gary had spoke to me when I was running. He wanted to make sure that all these items were separated. I gave him an alternative position, and he gave me an explanation, and it's like, okay, that makes more sense. And where there was the discussion about Bergeron, Bergeron wasn't even on the bidding sheet, was it?
They're not in business anymore.
Okay, so we couldn't bring those in, even if we wanted them. All right. That wraps up my questions.
Great, thank you.
Did I hear a comment that something that I said, I misspoke? I thought somebody may have said something that you or Gary, that something I had said was not accurate.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, I misheard. Good, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from council? All right. All right, once again, thank you all for the feedback on this. Jim, I saw you had your hand up. Awesome. Great, thank you. Yeah. Got it. Yeah. Yeah, it's on our town fiscal year, which is from October 1st through September 30th. All right, okay, so seeing no other comments. Yes.
Can you come up?
Yeah, please, come on up. Come on up. I know this is a big deal in the town, so I'm kind of breaking our normal rules, but I appreciate you all coming out and being open with your thoughts, so
Sorry,
thank you.
I just had a quick question on
Yeah,
the contract.
absolutely. Go ahead.
So you talked about the true-up on it, and, you know, I do, with dealing with other contracts before, you know, I understand that, but have we established a baseline in the contract that we have with Waste Management now for what we have now?
Yes.
That has been picked up from the prior people, so we know where we're starting with? And who's responsible to give that to us, and when are they responsible to give that to us? On an annual basis?
Do we get it monthly? Yeah, yeah. So before, yeah, absolutely. So, and you brought that up, and I meant to talk about it, and I missed it. So thank you for bringing that back up again. So, yeah, what our fees are based on are strictly the debris that this town has generated over the past, I'm going to say, it's like 8-10 years. They go way back to look at it because they're looking for a trend. You know, they don't want to get caught either, and they take into account years that there's a hurricane and those things are higher, and so they do their equation. But yes, it's based on the actual tonnage that was dropped off and disposed of by Waste Pro now for the last several years, and they take that all into account, and we continue to get those numbers, and it gets evaluated, and then once a year there's a true up.
Okay. And did they establish about when we have midweek pickup, when we're allowed to pick up, when we're allowed to put out for bulk? Because personally, ours is Wednesday, so if you could just address that?
Yes, please. Thank you for bringing that up. That's a great point as well. So a number of years ago, going back like 15 years ago or so, there was an ordinance, and I think a lot of folks are still familiar with this. There was an ordinance where you could only put your bulk out there 24 or 48 hours ahead of time. I don't remember exactly what the hours was, but it was 1 or 2 days ahead of time. But then about, 5-6 years ago, we addressed that so that no matter when your bulk pickup day is, you can put the debris out the weekend before. So like out where I am, our bulk pickup day has been Wednesday pretty much forever. And so, normally Saturday morning is when I do my thing, and I'll just put all the debris out there Saturday morning, and it'll be out there and then picked up Wednesday. All right. Okay, Tracy.
The website was updated today.
Okay.
To say the weekend before.
Okay, you said we had Waste Management before, which we did. But Waste Management before didn't do this to us with their one trash can limitation thing. We could do like we were doing now. So there is a change.
Yes, absolutely there's a change.
There's a change. Now, yeah, that's a big garbage can. It'll hold a lot more than that one. But there's a couple things I was looking at. One was we're trading like bad bulk pickup for bad maybe trash can pickup. It's like the same apples, kind of like just changing, but we're paying more for that. And then that's what it's coming down to for the people. They're just seeing, hey, it's a big price. Well, everything's going up. I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but everything I try to buy is way more. But that we have to take into consideration. Now, the bulk, I understand the sizing that Steve explained for the land size. That makes sense. Because my 3 acres, we put out more bulk than I do for a 1 acre. So that makes sense. But the trash can thing, that's really, I still don't get that.
Okay, I'll address it because you actually brought up a good point.
That's something that, okay, I got a big house, I got 20 bedrooms, I got, 15 kids. It doesn't matter if I have 15 kids in school or I got no kids in school. I got to still pay the school taxes the same.
Yep.
So that's the part I don't get.
Okay.
So we got to figure that out. And the fire, that was mentioned in there. We're talking about the so-called volunteer fire department. Why did that go up? I mean, I love the guys. I mean, I went to high school with some of them. But I'm trying to figure out what they do. Because, I mean, they do the barbecues, which is great, and they do, the Santa Claus thing, which is great.
We'll get to the fire. We're not on the fire yet.
Why are we paying volunteers that aren't volunteers?
Can you wait? That's our next agenda item, and we'll talk about that.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Got it, thanks.
All right, yep. All right, so I'm going to close it out after this because I think we've covered everything, but I do want to address these 2 points that just came up. So why did we go to these cans? There's a reason, the main reason why we went to these cans were, and part of it was what we learned during COVID, but part of it is recognizing that costs were going to go up. So the advantage to these cans are they got us a lower price, okay? I know the prices went up, but they would have gone up even more if we hadn't gone this way. And so the council was that was one of the things that we obviously heard a lot about, was that we want to keep the prices as low as we can. And I know probably shaking heads out there like, okay, the prices went up a lot, but this actually was one of the ways that we were able to reduce that increase. So the why this reduces it is because it only takes one person on the truck rather than 2 people on the truck. That's a huge expense that is reduced from the hauler's standpoint. And so that portion of that expense is then passed on to our savings, is passed on to us. So that was why we went to this. The other reason, which hopefully we never have an issue like COVID again, but getting to, for our current hauler, you've got to have 2 people or that truck's not running. That's just how it works. That truck is not going to run with one individual. If one person has COVID, the other guy doesn't, that truck's not leaving the station, right? So this way, it takes fewer folks, and we're counting on the service being more consistent and fewer interruptions. So that was why we elected to go this way from a cost and service standpoint. The other point with that is that we do want the service to be as fair as possible. And so if there is, once again, the town gets billed as a whole based on the tonnage that gets dropped off. That's what we get billed at. And so the more that people put out, the higher the expense is going to be for the town. And so the goal here is to try and recoup that in as fair a way as possible. And so if somebody is putting out, requires 2 cans, that means they're putting out more than an individual that only requires 1 can, then they're going to pay not double, but they are going to pay extra for it. And overall, I think that's probably a fairer option for all involved. But I will reiterate once again, try that big can, because in case I didn't make it clear, it's a really large can. So I think it's going to fit a lot of stuff in there, and I'm hoping that it'll be really an exception that requires a second can. So, all right. Any final comments from the council? We good?
Good job.
Thanks.
Mayor, although I read it into the item, there wasn't a motion in a second, so if you could please do that for voting purposes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. If you can please call the roll.
Councilmember Albritton?
Yes?
Councilmember Hartman?
Yes.
Councilmember Kaczynski?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jablonski?
Yes.
Mayor Bright Cruz?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Okay, so now we'll move into the fire assessment portion. I'll turn it over to Emil. Oh, yeah, why don't we read it into the record?
Sure, I'll read it, and then if there could be a motion for discussion purposes
Thank you.
afterward. A resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Southwest Ranches, Florida, providing findings, providing purpose, providing for provision and funding of fire protection services, providing for imposition and computation of fire protection assessments, providing legislative determinations of special benefit and fair apportionment, approving the final fire services assessment rates and final role relating to the provision of fire protection services, facilities, and programs in the town for fiscal year 2022-23, confirming an exemption for veterans with service-connected, total, and permanent disability, providing for effect of adoption of resolution, providing for application of assessment proceeds providing for conflicts and severability, and providing an effective date.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Turn it over to Emil, our financial administrator.
Thank you, Mayor, again.
Thank you.
So going into the fire assessment now, the next slide, please. This is pretty much a summary of what we have already presented. The difference here is that we are pointing out what was proposed, what the final rate is, and what the adopted was in the previous year. In the last column, we're pretty much detailing what has gone up, the amount, and what has come down. What you see in red is the amount that has actually been reduced year over year. This is essentially, as a point of reference, again, as we indicated and Andy mentioned in his summary, is that last year's rate of $690 was essentially the result of the council approving the utilization of additional funds assigned to a project to bring it down to the $764.44. As during the budget workshop, as it was directed by council, a plan was actually provided to us, guidance was provided to us as to how can we go back, utilize those savings that the town has actually accumulated throughout the years and bring that back and return that back to the citizens. That was our attempt. And what we are proposing here is pretty much the final rate in the column in the center. It's pretty much what we propose, $889.66, and what we are proposing as the final rate for the fire assessment, the combined non-residential and the acreage, which in the next slide we're going to explain a little bit more. So this is where we are, where we were back on August 16. We were proposing during the budget workshop a residential rate of $889.66 per residence. We tried to utilize the same exercise as it was done the year before. How much did we use last year? $306,310 to reduce what was originally proposed of $764.44 to the $690. So here, we went back to our costs. We tried to lean our operating expenses in a way in order for us to bring this down without having to utilize any millage or saving from previous years. But in order for us to bring it back to the amount that we had as target, which was last year $764.44, we are proposing to utilize $194,952 from unassigned fund balance as a subsidy, and then utilizing from the current proposed budget liens operating amounts that we were able to pull out in the amount of $307,888. That would bring the rate to the $764.44. If you don't mind going back to the previous slide. Here, it's not just the residential that we're bringing down. We're also bringing down the acreage from $146.68 to $126.04. That's a decrease from a proposed original budget of $50.08. That's also a reduction in the combined non-residential rate from the proposed 0.8633 to the final rate that we are presenting to council of 0.7418. This is lower than the year before, 0.8314. Go back to the next one. It is important to know that what we are presenting here, it's the same amount that we are utilizing for a reduction in 22-23 of $502,832 across the 3-year line that was advised and directed by council across the next 3 years. It's important to know that the amount that we are recommending, we are using unassigned fund balance for ongoing operation as in order for us to return that back to the citizens. Once this timeline ends in 24-25, whatever the rate is at that point in time, as there is no subsidy being pulled from unassigned fund balance, that's something that needs to be considered at that point in time. But in essence, what we're doing is that our current unassigned fund balance percentage-wise for the audited financial statement of 2021 was 32%. We are projecting in 2022 that amount to come down about to 28% based on the utilization of this fiscal year of unassigned fund balance. What we are proposing here, it's utilizing those funds and still have a healthy unassigned fund balance at fiscal year 24, 22, 25 of 22%. I know that's a point of discussion during the budget workshop was to what an unassigned reserve balance is safe. For some municipalities, 18, 20, 25, depending on the municipality. GFOA actually recommend at least 2 months of operations, which is what normally is discussed during this type of conversations, which is roughly about 17, 18%. What we are contemplating here is not just utilizing those funds, but at the same time being prudent, fiscally responsible, and sustaining that above that 17% to 22%.
22.
Next one. Pretty much what we're presenting here is that year-over-year increase of the fire assessment, what it was for the last 4 years. And again, this is just the 690 last year and the 764. The same thing is applicable for the acreage.
Emil, before you go too far on, when we were here for the workshop, we were recognizing that we didn't want to go to 17, even though that's the GASB recommendation. We probably wanted to be closer to 20. How did we arrive at the decision of 22%?
I took into account what GFOA recommend, which is that 17, 18%. And it's very likely that most municipalities within the range that we are, being the proximity to the sea and the storms, been to increase that by 5%. That 5%, it's about a little over 900,000, which would be an increment, sure, a storm, not necessarily a hurricane happens, to be prevented.
So it's a little better risk mitigation strategy?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Again, here, this is just to point out our rankings in the Broward County community. Although we are 25, which we were 25 on July 28, as well as during the budget workshop here, back in during the budget workshop on July 28, the increased percentage was actually a little over 28%. By implementing this change, the percentage increase to the town, to the residents, will be only 10.79% compared to the previous year. Next slide. This is the same per capita cost that we provided during the budget workshop. We did a slight change, is that during that presentation, the population number that was used was 7,502. An updated number was provided, so we incorporated into this slide, bringing that rank position from 22 that we were to 21. And that's basically where we are, so we bring it back to the mayor for any comments and questions on the public to have discussions for it.
Great, thank you, Emil. Appreciate it, walking us through that. Any council comment before I open it up to the public? Seeing none, is there any public comment on this item? Yeah, go ahead, Mary Ann. We need to have you come up. I'm sorry.
Marianne Allen, 12701 Mustang Trail. So I see that our cost is going to be $940, but Davie is paying $902 per capita. Parkland is even less, and they're a big equestrian community. And I'm not great with numbers, but why are we paying more than some of the other equestrian communities per capita? That's just my question. Thank you.
Any other comments? I know we had the one gentleman from one of the churches here. I don't know if he's still out. Is he outside? Can somebody just check if he's here? I'd like to. Do you live? Okay. All right. Yeah.
Debbie Green, 5201 Southwest 199. I know there was a comment earlier about what does the volunteer fire department do, and I know they have picnics and this and that. I think it's very important that everybody understands what the volunteer fire department does in combination with the Davie Fire Rescue and the fire department. In the studies that the Davie department itself did back, I forget how many years ago now, whether that was 8 or however many years, and they came to the same conclusion when they did the study now, that in order to sufficiently cover and protect the west side of town, they need the volunteer fire department. Without them, it was like millions more, because then it would require them to add more personnel and, I don't know, trucks, whatever. I'm not sure about the trucks.
Right.
But it would require more of them to be able to cover the area out west. So for me, if it's, the $700 or whatever it was for the year, it's $60 a month. It's well worth. Maybe you don't have a dinner out, but you make sure that you have that coverage when you need it. Thank God we've never needed to have it. But you know what? It's part of home ownership. You get insurance for your home just in case. Well, if that's going to save somebody's life, it is well worth, whatever that cost is. And I think the town, by having the volunteer fire department, is saving the residents a great deal. Otherwise, we think this is high. It would be much higher. So I just want to make sure that
Thank you.
we all remember that.
Thank you. Great point. Great point.
Jennifer Dacton, 6120 Southwest 173rd Way. I just had a couple of questions. Did you say the rate was going to stay the same until 2024? Or is this break that we're getting just for this year? And then what will it go up? Because looking at the last 3 years, we've had anywhere between $160, $75 increase every single year. Also, isn't there a grant out there or something going on that we're working on that we got that will help build a new building, new location? Will that then change our rate once that building's been furnished or built or whatever?
Great. Yeah, good point. Thank you. Any other public comment? Really quick.
A lot of you don't remember the wildfires we had in 1984, and I was here. And I sat on the balcony of Colony Point on Johnson and Flamingo, and I watched Southwest ranches burn. There were flames I could see, because we were mostly forest at that time before we had all the development. We're going into the driest season I have seen in 40 years. We haven't been getting the rains that we get every afternoon, and we're going into winter, which is our dry season. This could really impact us for wildfires this winter, and I'm thanking God we have a volunteer fire department. They have brush trucks that can access areas that the regular fire department can't. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Marianne.
Debbie Eiten, 14521 West Palomino Drive. I just want to say, I'm very appreciative for our volunteer fire department. We have family and have had generations of family in fire and police. The one thing that I would like to ask is if everybody could answer, if they've visited the fire station recently. You know, all of my family firefighters and friend firefighters, all the departments talk amongst each other. And I do understand that our fire department, our volunteer fire department is in really rough shape. And I understand that we're looking at giving them, even though they're volunteers, a slight, very teeny tiny increase. But I do also understand that we did sell some property out west. And is there a possibility that we can look at improving our fire department that our volunteers have to work in that's not in great shape, and possibly look at paying them a little bit more, using that money to pay them a little bit more, because we have a huge turnover at our volunteer fire department. So if you guys could answer that, I'd appreciate it.
Anybody else?
Okay. I love everybody who's a fireman. I really do. Firewoman. Anyways, the only thing I kind of see is when we say the word volunteer, when I volunteered, I didn't get paid anything. When I volunteered for any community service, be it for the schools, the system, the government, the state, it was free. Other than they might buy me lunch, but anyways, what I'm seeing is a lot of neighbors that have always lived out here were firemen, police. We have a lot of them that moved out here when I was a kid, and I love them all. I adore them all. And believe me, if we have a fire, they're running out their front doors anyways and helping, regardless. The thing is, I'm noticing, and I'm listening to them, they're joining our town of Southwest Ranch's volunteer fire department so they can keep their licenses intact when they are not getting a job. Is that what we're doing? Are we helping people stay with their licenses and paying them to do that? Or are we really having a volunteer service? So like I said, they do great at the barbecues. They do great with the Santa Claus. And I'm sure they've done great at trying to stop some bonfires that people used to do out here, which I love. But what are they doing? I mean, I've heard them request a fire truck that could do a 3-story building. Is there a 3-story building in Southwest Ranches? There's some things they're requesting that are a little bit too much. We've got Pembroke Pines Fire Department out by Country Estates. We've got Weston, and we've got Davie, all surrounding us, that we also are pitching in somehow through the county taxes. And then we're keeping people in the neighborhood happy. So we need to think about that, because that's a lot of money that we're doing. And can they do medical attention to us? Because that's what they're supposed to also be able to do. If I said I want to go there and take a CPR course, can I do that? If I want to take a first aid course, can they provide that? I don't know if we can provide that for residents. That's something to also look into that they could be doing if we're going to do this. There's certain things that I don't know if this really worth that much more money. We're helping, and they're helping in return. But how much are we willing to do? Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy.
Do I have to do my name again?
Yeah, you do. Sorry.
Okay. Manon Hagan Stevens, 4721 Southwest 164 Terrace. Not to get an argument with Tracy, but I love our volunteer fire department. I don't think people realize how much they really contribute. It's just not about keeping up your certification, which is a nice plus. But if you have a horse farm and you have 20 animals and, you know, the guys that work the farm, you need trained people out there doing it. You need the backup. You just can't have your neighbor go in there and hope that he doesn't get burned or hope the animals don't get. You need the proper gear. We need certified people doing the job and doing it right and doing it well. And like you said, if we can even have a fundraiser, it's kind of sad to have to think about a GoFundMe because their facilities are so out of touch. So I would like to do whatever we can to rally the troops for our volunteer firefighters. Thanks, guys.
Great. Thank you, Manon. Anyone else? Great feedback. All right, I'll close public comment. I'll make a few comments, and I know the rest of the council will jump in where I miss. So, all right. So the one item that was brought up was the cost per capita. Great question. Like, why is Davie less than us? And I think, you know, one of the things that inherently is part of our town, because we are separated, we've got nice big open lots, is that there's some fixed costs that we have to spread among all us people, and we're kind of spread around. So it's not to be unexpected that our costs are higher than some of our neighbors that are concentrated. Let's face it, if you've got, 1,000 people in a high-rise condominium, they're going to generate a ton more money in a given space than we are. So that factors into it. I'm actually very proud of the fact that we're right there in the middle with everyone else. I think that speaks very highly to how we've tried to maintain the costs as low as possible. And that feeds right into, so how much are we saving, Debbie referenced a couple of studies. I want to touch on those as well. So we had a study. We went outside and had a study done a number of years ago, about, I'm going to say 5, 6, 7 years ago. And they came back because we were looking to make sure that we were going down the right way. And they did a strategic plan for us, for our fire. And they identified that we had a real weakness, especially out west. And they confirmed the need for the volunteers out there. But they went beyond that, and they indicated, and don't quote me on this number because it's been a couple of years since I looked at this study, although I have read it over more than once. But as I recall, it was about $1.5 million is what it would cost for us to have contract and bring in Davie to do the same work that the volunteers are doing. And what's the cost of the volunteers? It's generally been around $300,000 to $400,000. Obviously, as they grow and as inflation comes along, and we are giving increases this year, so it's now around $500,000, but still it's well off the $1.5 million that was out there. In the most current contract, the one that we are looking to close in on here in the next few months, I'm looking at Andy smiling because we're trying to close this out as quickly as possible, Andy. But there's actually, for other reasons that I don't want to get too far afield, but in 5 years, Davie is going to force us to put a full complement. Now, we have adaptive service out west, which means basically we've got one crew and they choose whether to go on a fire truck or an emergency truck. And what Davie is saying is in 5 years, you're going to have 2 crews out there, one for the fire, one for the one for the rescue. And so they tagged a price to that. And that is $2 million a year, that increase. So if you want to know what the volunteers are saving us, not what was estimated 5, 6 years ago, but what is actually Davie saying this is what it's going to cost, it's a full $2 million. So the money that we spend in the volunteer fires department each year is saving us a tremendous amount of money overall. Do they, it has to work for everybody, right? So is there an element where those firefighters are keeping up their certifications and such? Absolutely. Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that. It works for them and it works for us. We're certainly, even with the increase, we're still, as you can tell by the difference in the price, the cost, we're still paying a very nominal amount compared to what it would cost otherwise. So it has to work for both. They put in a tremendous amount of time with their training and the whole 9 yards to be prepared so that when there is an emergency, they are prepared. Many times they do get there first. Davey may be out on another call. Many times they do arrive first, and they do provide medical services. Are they the full? Do they have the drugs and everything on there? No, they don't. But they do. They are able to perform the basic life-saving services to be able to save residents, and they've saved lives in our town. So it's important. I'm incredibly proud of them. I'm incredibly proud of Chief, all that he's done. He doesn't get near the thanks. He takes a tremendous amount of abuse at times. That is undeserved, but he's done a tremendous job and has built a great staff. But I'm incredibly proud of all those folks. They do an amazing job. So a couple of things. Question was brought up. Is this rate, can it change in the future? Yes, it can and will change in the future. The question came up regarding the property, the building out west. We're in the process of identifying a location that we hope to build a public safety building on out there, which will serve as a fire station, a permanent location. I have been out to the current location. It has been a little while, but I know it's not where we want them to be. I understand that. I recognize that. And I think the whole council recognizes that. And frankly, we as a town need a structure that was built and designed to withstand a hurricane. And even this building, as strong as it is, obviously a permanent building, was not built specifically with that in mind and designed. So we do need the public safety building. It is where the fire department will be housed, and we'll get out of the temporary mobile unit that it's in, and everybody will be glad when that happens, right? And we're working hard to make that happen. I just met with Andy today, and we had another discussion about it. We have a discussion about it every time we get together because it's that important. So, so we are working on that. There'll be more to come on that as we move along. The last one, sorry, I can't just let it go out there. We're not buying an engine to go for a 3-story building. Let me just clear that up right now. It's not happening. Okay. So, all right. What did I miss? Anything else? Yeah, David.
Just the volunteers do provide a service of rescuing animals.
That's right. Yep.
that have escaped. We've had a couple instances this year that were highly promoted, where they did very good work in rescuing some farm animals. And then second of all, November 3rd, 2020, on Election Day, we were out at the church, and we're just sitting there, and all of a sudden we see our volunteers flying by, lights, sirens going off. And then maybe 10 minutes later, Davey comes up. And we later learned that there was a rollover accident with a person that was ejected from the vehicle. And our volunteers were first on the scene and saved a person's life. At that moment, I said, we got to keep these guys. They are an asset. They saved somebody's life. That's it.
Absolutely. Thank you, David. The other thing, I'll just a second, is the other thing you brought to mind is it's been a little while since we had a hurricane. But I will say this, that they are a tremendous service to the town in that type of event. They're out there clearing roads and helping out residents and doing a tremendous amount of work in those periods as well. Yeah.
Good. Just a couple of other things to clarify. In terms of the stipend that they get, they're not salaried employees. They don't get paid unless they work a shift. So if somebody works 4 shifts in a month, They get paid for the 4 shifts that they work. This isn't something where they're coming to work here for their livelihood. Most of them have other jobs. The reason we do have some turnover is a lot of relatively junior firefighters come here. They go through our training program, they go through the county's training, and they get their certifications. But they can't just come here and let them rest. What ends up happening is after they've accumulated enough time in service working with us, they'll get hired by the various fire departments around us. Good luck going into a fire department here in South Florida, in any of the cities, and not running into somebody who's worked on Southwest Ranch's fire department. We do an excellent job training them. That's why the cities kind of gobble them up. But that's not true of everybody. We have a number of people on our fire department that have been here for years, and they're completely happy doing that type of a role versus coming here as kind of a stepping stone onto something, with a permanent position in a fire department. So I just wanted to put that out there as well. Thank you.
Jim?
Yeah, Steve, I'll be brief. I've had the privilege of sitting in the Fire Advisory Board meetings along with the other council members, and a question was risen last couple meetings as to what it would cost to have our own department, and I believe that number is well over $20 million, $30 million to start that. I mean, that's a number, I know it's hard to believe, but by the time you buy the equipment, the building, the property, staff it from the chief down yearly, that's just something that I don't think this town can afford. That's why we depend on Davy. I know Davy, part of this cost here is their annual increase, and that's due because of their pension salaries and everything that's involved. But this town here needs the volunteer fire departments, like our mayor mentioned. The cost to them, as opposed to what we pay Davy, is just night and day. So, these costs here are a drop in the bucket as to what it would cost you, and you would be screaming then of a $20 million, $30 million fire department to get it started. The other small town, Pembroke Park, I guess, tried to start their own police department. I know that's been mentioned also, and that was a total failure for the town. That cost them somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 million. It lasted about 6 months and it fell through. We don't want to go through that. We honestly and truly don't want to go through that. So I thank you for, your attention, and that's it, Mayor.
You good?
Just one more last one.
Oh, okay, yeah, go
Real
ahead.
quick. We use advisory boards throughout town to advise the council on the way that residents want to go on certain things, as well as giving us ideas and feedback and input. And the Fire Advisory Board is pretty unique. Steve and I have been attending them for years, and we're probably the only two, although there's one other person. The people that advise us are all chiefs or retired chiefs from Dade, Broward County. It's interesting to listen to these guys talk because they understand what fire departments do. The recommendations they make to our chief, to us, and as well to the administration is probably unparalleled anywhere in South Florida. I mean, these are guys that are purchasing equipment for Dade and Broward County. One guy headed up fire department procurement, buying all the trucks and all that stuff. And when that person turns around and says, right now it's taking a year to get a fire truck, he knows what he's talking about. So again, the volunteers are guided by professionals that thoroughly understand the role of operating a fire department. These guys are all like CEOs anywhere else. So we're very happy, we're very lucky to have the benefit of their feedback every month. So thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. One other point that was brought to my attention, thank you all, that is kind of it's a hidden savings really that probably nobody realizes, is that having the volunteers there gives us, I'm not sure, is it a lower or a higher ISO? It's a better ISO rating. And where that's reflected, although you never see it, is on your insurance. The better the rating, the lower your insurance is. That's part of the any insurance company's calculation. And so there is a savings there that you'll never really see. You'll never be broken out, but it is there through having them. So, all right. Yeah, Jen, come on up. Can you please come up so we can?
Jennifer Dacton, 6120 Southwest 173rd Way. Something I'd like to add is it was brought up that we pay them. They get $150 to $200 for a 24-hour time away from their families, away from meals, away from their kids. So for that 24 hours, they're making what, $5 an hour, and they have to pay for their own food, and they have to sleep in an area where their beds are falling through the floor, and they have to buy all of their own clothes. Like, it's not like we're really paying them anything normal.
Thank you, Jen. All right. Any other comment on this item? Seeing none, we can please call the roll.
Councilmember Albritton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hartman?
Yes.
Councilmember Kozinski?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jablonski?
Yes.
Mayor Bright Cruz?
Yes.
Motion passed.
All right. All right, let me read this item into the record, kind of get the official out of the way. The tentative millage rate for consideration by the council is 3.900 mils, which will generate revenues of $7,115,871, representing a 2.68% increase over the rollback rate of 3.7981 mils. Okay.
Andy, quick question. Are you going to be doing 7 and 8 together, or are we keeping them separate? Should we read them both in, or just 7?
No, we're going to keep them separate.
Okay, fine. A resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Southwest Ranches, Florida, approving and adopting the tentative millage rate for taxation of real property lying within the boundaries of the Town of Southwest Ranches for fiscal year 2022-2023, commencing October 1, 2022, and ending September 30th, 2023, providing for severability and providing for an effective date. Mayor, if we could have a motion, a second, and then we can open up for discussion debate.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Great, thank you. Yeah, Emil, you can give the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. So we're about to start on the tentative millage rate, the first public hearing. Next slide, please. As it was briefly mentioned during Andy's, the town administrator comments, we heard the comments and the direction from council, and that last year's adopted budget was 4.215. We originally proposed a reduction to that to 4.15. Now we went further ahead and were able to bring this down to 3.900. Again, this is following council directive, and this reduction, going back to last year's adopted, represents an 8.24% decrease from last year's adopted millage rate. This reduction represents a reduction in the revenue that the town would actually be receiving of $638,604. Pretty much, this is what we're giving back the residents, considering the increased assessment in taxable valuation on the property. So, as the mayor indicated, that's a 2.68% compared to the rollback rate. This value, consider that we are using an assessed valuation of a single home at $500,000. We went back to BCPA, the Broward County Property Purchase website, and we were able to confirm that the taxable median value of a home in Southwest Ranches is $515,000. So it goes in line to what we are actually utilizing here. So if we take that assumption, and this will represent a combined increase from the rollback rate of $51. However, if we take that into consideration and compare that to last year's adopted rate, it would actually represent a decrease to the residents of $175 should we have not changed the millage rate. This also actually brings down the rank on the proposed budget on July 28, as well as on the budget workshop. We were ranked 5th lowest. By taking this decrease and adopting this decrease, we'll be now going back from 5th down to 4th place. Next one. How do we get to this reduction? Essentially, we did, the town refinanced some debt a few years ago. We went back into our numbers. We have very prudent and conservative as to how we use any savings, so to speak, within a specific fund. In this case, it wouldn't be my recommendation to bring in a reduction in millage rate if we do not contemplate that this amount would actually sustain going forward into the future. So we went back into the audited financials for the town, and we were able to confirm that within the debt service fund, there is extra money left from those refinance that happens a couple of years ago. So we are recommending to use some of that to reduce the debt service millage payment in 22-23 from $844,626 to $388,480. How do we make that determination that this money could actually be sustained for a longer period? Well, very simple, by going over into what our projection debt service payment going to be into next year, which we do have one payment coming off our books. At the same time, we look at our operations going forward and what the assessed, very conservative approach. Last year was 8.5% increase on assessed taxable assessed value. This year was about 14%. So we're not even contemplating something as drastic or high as that. We're going very low. Should we consider to keep the same increase in valuation as we have now, we'll still be able to come up with that 456. So, and just to have the council and the public be aware that in no way we're utilizing any projections of any saving in future debt solution. This is pretty much just going forward as to what we project based on our on a lean operating millage going forward, as well as the savings or the refinancing savings that we were to obtain from previous year that was never passed down into the debt service payment. Next slide. Again here, just as a point of reference and to bring a picture that is behind Councilmember Kaczynski, the eagle actually is flying down. We're going back from 2019 into 2023. Actually, it's really going on a peak. It's going down. There are three point of reference is that 2018, 19, and 20 actually reference that T-store component was added to those items. And just as a point of reference, just the T-store alone, even if we remove the T-store that was contemplated and added as a component to those millage rate during those 3 years, we wouldn't be close to the amount if we take that into account. For example, in 2018, the millage rate without the T-store component was 4.10, and we are 3.9. Next slide, please. This is a comparison as to the residents that they need to know that the tax bill, which I believe they all do, is not just comprehensive of the town of Southwest Ranches, which is one of the components of their tax bill. Last year, on the next slide, once we get to that, it's going to represent what was actually assessed by Broward County and what we are assessing today based on our proposed millage reduction. Right now, we're looking at 16.54. That's what's going to be assessed on every property within the town of Southwest Ranches. And of that, the town, it's only, and I'm going to make a reference to the word only, 23.5 is the fact that last year was close to 25% of the 17 point of the comprehensive Broward County tax millage rate. Next one. And here again, it's just pretty much going as an indication what I just mentioned. 17.2426 versus the 16.54. Just for transparency purposes, doesn't mean that it was only the town that is reflecting of this reduction, but we do represent a big portion of it. Next slide. And now going back to town council for comments, questions, and direction as to how we proceed.
Great, thank you, Emil.
Sure.
Appreciate that. Any comments from council?
Mayor, I'd just like to say thank you to Emil and Andy and the whole staff for putting this together. I mean, there's a lot of hard work here. I don't think people understand. So thank you very much.
Yeah, great job.
So there's another aspect of this that it's probably important to understand. We've talked about solid waste. That's a contract. We've talked about the Davie Public Service contract for police and fire. Again, a contract. The way of the world with particularly the Davie contract is it has escalators. I mean, they're a union shop, and their costs go up based on their union agreements, so we bear our burden of those. This is the one piece that's not contract driven. Your ad valorem taxes are paying for the operation of the town. That's Andy and his team, and Emil and his team, and all the work that they do. This is the one area that we as the council have control over in terms of costs. We pass the budget. We review and approve any variances. If they need more money for something, and they can justify it, we approve that. So this is where the council has the thumb on the pulse of the town and its operations. And this is one that personally, 4 years of either flat or even or lower taxes, I'm pretty proud of. But at the end of the day, this also reflects, we can take all the credit in the world. It's Andy and the teams I just mentioned that are really going to bat for the residents on a daily basis, saving money wherever they can find an opportunity and keeping our taxes low. So thanks to the team.
Yeah, great points. Awesome. Okay, let me open it up to the public. Any public comment on this item? Come on up.
Marianne Allen, 12701 Mustang Trail. This is something I've been thinking about for a long time. And we've had a tremendous increase in the value of the acreage and the homes. It's gone up by millions, which is a windfall. When all of a sudden your new tax base is now not 500,000, but it's $1.5 million, it's $2 million. The town's drawing in a lot of money with those windfalls. And it's like with real estate. It used to be 6% commission. The average home was $250,000, so they were making, $18,000 sometimes on a deal. But that house now is $1 million. 6% of that is $60,000. Now, is that reasonable that they're getting $60,000 on a sale for a house? They're not doing any more work for that. It's the same thing with taxation and millage. The more that we're being artificially driven, the cost of our housing here in Southwest Ranches. We are in such demand from every sector. And it's unfair that people from across the country can come here and buy us out as residents. And the way they're going to force us out is the increase in taxes that happens with an artificial demand for our land. So is it fair that the prices are being driven up so high because people are fleeing other parts of the country and everybody wants to settle here because Southwest Ranches is the best place to live? I can tell you that from being here for so long. So I really commend the staff because I would have said, since you're getting so much more money on the appreciation of our land and our sales, that you should drop the millage rate. You've already done it. And thank you so much for that. You're preserving the ability for people like myself that are older and on pensions to still stay here and love this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ann.
Okay, she kind of asked the question I was going to ask, except it's the worst place to live because I don't want traffic jams. Nobody move here. Stay away. It's horrible here. It's mosquitoes, it's gators, snakes. Don't move here, please. No more traffic. Anyways, let me see if I understand this. Why are we paying more than Weston? That's what I'm trying to understand here. You know, but if the county raised our values of our properties, and I'm going to try to see if I understand this. They raise our property values because Save Our Homes is 12%, so they can really jump instead of 12% every year.
3%.
Oh, it's 3%. Okay, thank you for correcting me.
12, big difference.
Yeah, well, they're jumping us, and the next thing you know, we're jumped. Wouldn't we have made more money for the town, or how did that work out? Wouldn't we have gotten a little bit more money out of that? Now that instead of me being, instead of a house being $200,000, it's now $500,000. So instead of paying $5,000 for property tax, you're paying $6,000 for property tax. So wouldn't we have made some money as a town because that value went up? So wouldn't we go up too with that value? Wouldn't we have gotten some money so we could be like less than Weston? I don't like that idea.
I'll address it.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Tracy. Any other public comment? Hey, Kurt.
Kirk Hobson Garcia, 16201 Stirling Road. I was going through the budget and I just wanted to get some more details on the operating costs. Is there a part on the website where you'll have the details associated with that?
We normally have the budget out there, isn't it? Yeah, so it is online. You can get the full budget.
Yeah, because I saw that is the part of the budget that takes the most
Yes.
revenue. So I was interested in seeing how the funds were being spent.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It is available. Any other public comment? Okay. Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment. All right, let me just address a couple of things. So, speaking of the budget book, I'll talk about that first. So, yeah, the full budget is out there. You can take a look at it, and it has an incredible amount of detail on it. If you want to see the spreadsheets behind the detail, then you can make an appointment with Emil, and I'm sure he'll make time and talk you through it as much as you can stand, right? So, but it's all there, and I also echo the sentiments that Emil, we really appreciate all the time that you, your staff, Rich, and the full staff has put into this. It doesn't just fall together. Great job. So I want to talk a little bit about, great point, we have a higher millage than Weston. How in the world does that happen? And I'll tell you how that happens. It happens because they get the vast majority of their revenue not through ad valorem taxes, but through HOA fees. We are blessed in this town in many ways, and one of them is huge that we don't have HOA fees for the most part. And if you do, then it was your choice. So, but that's where they get their taxes are much, much higher than ours, but it all comes through the HOA fees. The vast majority of it comes through HOA fees. So this is not an apples to apples comparison by any stretch of the imagination. Andy is dying to say something, but I think I'll go ahead. Go ahead, Andy.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Yes, they do. Yeah, Weston does assess, which is not reflected in their millage. The one thing I wanted to point out to our residents, because we were talking about values going up around the county, 92.5 of the single-family homes in this town are homesteaded. and they are limited, I believe, at 1.4% in assessed value growth this year. So even though the values are up, we're seeing that. We're seeing it more on new construction, but we're not seeing our homeowners are protected. Those that are homesteaded are looking at a max of 1.4% in their assessed value growth.
Right.
Just want to share that.
Yep, good point, good point. So, yeah, so those increases obviously are capped because we live in the great state of Florida. And it's mostly, new folks moving in that are hit with that increase. So, okay. I think that covers the items there. Anything else, folks? All right. I think we are good. If we can please call the roll.
Motion is second. Councilmember Albritton?
Yes?
Councilmember Hartman?
Yes.
Councilmember Kozinski?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jablonski?
Yes.
Mayor Bright Cruz?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Great, thank you. All right, the last item on our budget meeting is the actual budget itself. If maybe we can read that into the record.
Sure, Mayor. An ordinance of the Town of Southwest Ranches, Florida, approving the budget of the Town of Southwest Ranches for fiscal year 2022-2023, commencing October 1, 2022, and ending September 30, 2023, providing for a budget basis, providing for expenditure of funds, providing for carryover of funds, providing for notice, providing for severability, providing for conflict, and providing for an effective date. This is first reading.
Motion to approve with a
Second.
minor amendment.
Never mind.
What do you got for us?
If you go on page 48 of 51, it says passed on first reading this 12th day of September 2022 on a motion made by Councilmember Jablonski and seconded by Councilmember Albritton.
Where are you at?
48 of 51.
Or we could just change the motion in a second, and then we'll be okay.
Yeah, that will be good.
You're close.
We're missing something here.
It's first reading. Yeah.
All right, so we will delete that,
That's fine.
okay, with that motion. Do we have a second for that?
It's pre-filled in now.
Yeah.
I'll second.
All right,
By the way, for the public, it's a carryover from last year.
Yeah.
'cause they used-
yeah, just,
And not to pile on, I'm no longer vice mayor.
all right, we're good. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none. So, this is kind of housekeeping. Obviously, the way it works is we set our revenues coming in, and then at that point, we can set the budget. And so this now confirms the budget.
One comment I'd like to make, and this is an accolade for the administration. Most people don't realize this, but guys like me up here keep track of these interesting facts. And that is that this town has run 12 straight years with a surplus budget
Pretty amazing.
without missing a beat.
Yeah.
Yep.
You got to think about that for a minute.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's pretty
Through
good.
some highs and lows, and it
Yeah,
always.
highs and lows, but we were
always-
able to stay within budget. So that's speaking
Think about the
volumes.
pandemic and the impacts of it.
Yeah,
Yeah, says a lot.
that's all.
Thank you, Gary. Great point. Any other council comment? Seeing none, if we can please call the roll.
Councilmember Albritton?
Yes?
Councilmember Hartman?
Yes.
Councilmember Kozinski?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jablonski?
Sure, yes.
Mayor Bright Cruz?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Great. Before we adjourn, I just want to say thank you again for the residents. It is awesome to see you all here. Great questions. We only get better when we get challenged. And so I really appreciate the time and the effort that you all took out of your week to come out here. So thank you. Thank you for that. We're going to, before we adjourn, just a quick note. So this is our budget meeting. It was actually scheduled to go from 6 to 7:30, probably to around 7 to 7:15. And then our normal council meeting was going to start at 7:30. Obviously, we ran over. So we're going to we will reconvene at, let's go with around 8:40. Let's start that, 8:40. So if you'd like to join in for the regular council meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Gary. We are adjourned.